right, well, that's okay, based on whatever you can remember. So, let's see. Melanie, let's start with you. Number one here. What is the purpose of the lookup table in automatic rescaling? You can check your worksheet. And while she's looking for her worksheet, now would be a good time for everyone else to also go on to worksheets. In that case, just off the top of your head, what do you remember?
I'm not sure what it is for. I just remember that it's for
Okay, so let's try and work our way through this question then. So we've, all right, go ahead, Emily.
The histogram of luminance
A histogram of luminance
values.
values. That's a lot of fancy words. So can you break that down for us? Imagine that, right? Imagine that I'm a new junior. What is
like
a
a specific anatomy, right? Like
good?
slide? I don't know. That's all I got.
All right. So yes, one thing we do know about lookup tables is that they are specific to anatomy, right? So you've got a lookup table for the head, lookup table for the foot, lookup table for the chest. Okay. And what does the question say we use the lookup table in? Right, we use it in rescaling. So what is rescaling? Not about the centering.
It targets the brightness and contrast.
Yes, corrects the grayscale. That's what rescale is.
where
Very good.
Specific values are over and under exposure.
Contrast.
it expands the grayscale to add more colors.
Very good. So we're correcting the grayscale, we're expanding the grayscale, and by doing so, we correct our contrast, we correct the brightness of the image. So when we first shoot an image, if you just take that raw data without pre-processing and try to display it on the screen, it is going to look very gray. The air in the edges looks gray. The air in the lungs looks gray. The spine looks gray. The bones look gray. The tissues look gray. Sure, it's lighter gray, darker gray, but it all looks kind of gray. Right? So there's not a lot of contrast. Right? Things don't pop like they're supposed to on an actual image. So we need to fix the contrast. We need to take that raw data, put it through some more pre-processing to get an image that actually looks the way it should. And so how do we go from a low contrast image to a high contrast image?
Lookup table.
That's right, that is the purpose of the lookup table. The lookup table is there to help you go from a low contrast image to a high contrast image. So basically, you have your low contrast. Your darkest color is a darkish gray, right? You throw that into the lookup table is like, all right, anywhere you've got this dark gray, it is now gonna look black. You've got a lightish gray for your bones. You give it to the lookup table says, all right, from now on, any color with this lightish gray will look white. And by doing so, right, you now expand the number of colors you're able to use. You expand your grayscale. You go from dark gray to light gray, all the way to black and white. And so now you get to use the full range of colors, and by doing so, you are now improving your contrast. Yes?
Is the lookup table, or is automatic rescaling present in like portable machines as well?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Good. So that is the purpose of the lookup table, right? It is the histogram that we run our original data through to get the new values the new brightness values, the new luminance values used in our final image. Good. So, Angelica, number 2, please. So, what are some issues with post-processing images before sending them to PACS? So, give us one of them. What is an issue with post-processing?
You can like change the image or something.
Mhm.
They can misdiagnose or something.
Okay, so by changing the image, right, you may change how the image looks, and then it may cause the doctor to misdiagnose the patient. All right. If the doctor wants to change it back to the original look, are they able to do so?
No.
No. Very good. Right. So that's one huge reason why you should try and post-process as little as possible, because any post-processing you do before you send it to PACS, those changes will become permanent. Right? We talked about PACS as the place we store the images. That's where you send the image data to be stored. So you change the image data before you send it to PACS. All PACS gets is your edited data. PACS never receives the original data, so it's never able to reproduce that original data. Okay? Be careful with post-processing. Yes, Samantha.
Yeah, Mr. Phung, just to add on to that, I've also just added, just in general, just to kind of keep in mind, our monitors just look different than their monitors anyway, so it may not even, they may have more detail, they may, we may not need to change any of that.
Very good. Right? So that is something else to keep in mind, right? A lot of texts, they post-process because, the contrast doesn't look so good. Let me change up the contrast so the image looks better, right? But the way the contrast looks on your monitors is different from the radiologist monitors. Because what kind of workstations do we work with? Secondary, great. And what kind of workstations do the radiologists work with? Primary. And what kind of price difference is there between them?
3 times.
A buttload, yes. A buttload, right? You can get our monitors for $100. The radiologist is like 10K, that's right. 100 times more, right? So yes, it's a buttload of the difference.
What do you mean by butt plug?
Get him, Shaheen.
It's a way to add emphasis, Shaheen, without being
for a positive
inappropriate for the classroom.
Because sometimes they got big butts, and so it's a big difference. Yeah.
Thank you.
Jane, like this marker.
All right, so Shaheen.
Cody's so ready. Cody's so ready.
All right, Shaheen, so
He's like, I'm here. Don't
give
don't
us
mark your
Cody's
hands.
butt.
another issue with post-processing. What is some other issue with post-processing? And here you can talk about a specific type of post-processing.
Collimation, sir.
Collimation. So why should we not use post-collimation?
For 2 reasons. Mainly, for maybe more, but for me, what I think is mainly 2 reasons. One is because patient will already get the dose that he should not be getting. And secondly, the doctor might miss out on what you cropped.
All right, very close. So yes, we should not use post-collimation, and the number one reason why is because you are not reducing patient dose. Right? Collimation is there to limit the exposure to the area of interest. If you post-collimate, it doesn't matter. You've already exposed beyond the area of interest. You've exposed the patient more than necessary, and what rule does that break? ALARA, very good. And what does ALARA stand for? Reasonably achievable. Very good. Just one L. As low as reasonably achievable. All right, but very good. Very good. Everyone still remembers. So,
You didn't think we
One
would
thing
know?
now.
He's like, I have my doubts, y'all.
I'll 50-50 on it. Okay, so,
That's the only thing.
When was X-ray discovered? Sometime in the past. A long time ago.
all right. Yes, yeah, well, it was a long time ago, right? It was all the way back in summer. Okay, so very good, right? Collimation, right? Post-collimation breaks ALARA because you're not properly collimating for the patient. The second reason why we want to collimate ahead of time and not after the fact is, what is that, Mansi? Very good. It is because of scatter, right? The more stuff you expose, the more interactions there will be. And what kind of interactions do we have in the body?
Scattering.
Scatter, content scatter, and what else?
Absorption.
Absorption. What kind of absorption?
Photoelectric.
Photoelectric absorption. Very good, right?
See, you
You guys-
remember that? Yeah, no.
Yeah, you guys are doing good.
Better
Yeah, give yourself a pat on the back. You guys are doing better than the seniors.
Better than the seniors.
Yeah, better than the
Yes.
seniors.
All I know is this your best class. Hit us against anybody, we win.
All right, don't tell the seniors said that.
Oh.
But naturally, they know they messed up.
They know.
They let it.
Hey, hey,
Yeah,
put
they
a
don't
point
be
for
that.
Mr. Phung.
Yeah, the
Talking
tech-
about-
Put in a
yeah,
point
the
for
tech
Mr.
talk.
Talking
Phung.
about
Yeah,
characteristic
yeah.
and drums plugging the body. All right, good. So scatter, right? The more anatomy you cover, the more scatter there will be. So you want to minimize the anatomy you cover so that you minimize the scatter produced. Less scatter means more what? Okay, kind of.
You said more scatter what?
More scatter means more. Sorry, less scatter means more what?
Exposures.
Not exposure. Well, actually yes. Technically, you're. So less scatter technically means less exposure. Less scatter means less fog.
Okay.
Fogging does what to the image?
Quadrilateral.
Not quantum
Okay.
Noise?
Which is
What kind of noise?
Noisy.
oh, no, quantum.
Not quantum.
Oh, that's the only one noise I know. Quantum
Yeah.
noise.
Noise?
You may have said it before. Maybe I missed it. It's the easy one. It starts with an F. Fog. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, I may have missed it.
It's
Sorry.
okay.
We all know Mossy said it. Mossy
Okay.
said it.
All right. So sorry. So less fogging, right? So less fogging means more what? Because fog causes what to the image? Fog does what to the image? Fog lowers what?
Contrast.
Contrast, right?
Okay.
Fog lowers contrast. So less fog means more contrast,
And that's in its.
right? So more collimations means more
Contract.
contrast. Yes, so collimation improves your contrast.
So that was for overexposure or underexposure?
That's for collimation.
Oh, but like how?
Period.
But what was quantum model or quantum
Oh,
noise
yes.
looks like?
So quantum motto deals with underexposure.
And that's the one that looks like fogging.
So that one looks like static. So be aware, there are two types of noise, right? Quantum model looks like static, like the random like dark and white spots on your image. Right? Fogging is just a general graying out of the image. Right? So they are different.
So does it look like motion?
It doesn't look like motion.
So
Right? Motion
motion
looks
is
like
motion.
a blur.
Okay,
Motion looks like you smear it.
okay.
But fog just makes things look gray overall. Yes.
Mr. Phung, something related to this. When you put that in the thoracic, thoracic X-ray, when you're taking when you put that pad in the heart to absorb the static scatter rays. So if the scatter rays are removed, then there should be less exposure. Why is it more exposure? I don't
You're
understand.
correct. There's going to be less exposure because you removed the scatter.
Oh, so the scatter rays goes away. So naturally but if that is not, if it takes away the scatter rays, so there's less exposure on the patient.
On not the patient, less scatter on the less exposure on the
The
IR.
IR.
Right? The patient's already exposed, but we're talking about the scatter that reaches the IR, the receptor. Okay, so actually, just want to make sure because I know I talked about this with my group, but I'm not sure if Ms. Punya covered it with the LBK group. Did you talk about putting the shield behind the patient for your lateral T-spot?
Mr. Donahue said.
Oh, Mr. Donahue did.
In
Okay,
class
very
we
good.
did it.
Very good.
He asked a question, but that was a tricky question.
All right. So, what is the purpose of that shield behind the patient?
Reduce scatter. Max scatter.
Yes, to reduce scatter. Very good. Okay. All right, great. So those are two post-processing issues, right? Patient dose and collimation, right? Dealing with. Sorry. Yeah. So
Fog,
Yeah.
column machine.
Dealing with
fog.
also, dealing with
Fog, you said.
fogging, contrast, thank you.
Mine is a little.
We,
foggy.
we also
Yeah, mine is a
mentioned,
little foggy, that's right. So
You
I need
Donnie.
to put a grid here.
You and Donnie got a lot going on today. What's going on?
Just trip over.
Yeah, Donnie almost fell. He was moving his butt down. I mean, you.
Really?
It's
This
fine.
happens when you like shoot running right now. You get overloaded brakes.
No,
I'm not giving them a
it
break. They
was-
don't give us one.
This class is hard.
so you lagged a little bit. Post processing was a little slow. Mr. Donahue actually scattered. We can move on.
We can move up?
Number 3, please.
Okay, number 3. So, Jay, number 3. Give me, what are...
I wanted the answer, man. Okay.
There's so many more post-processing things.
Alright, give me one type of exposure indicator.
Log median.
What is that?
Log median?
Log median, LGM, very good. Is log median directly or inversely related to dose?
Direct measure of dose.
Direct measure of dose. So if the LGM goes up, what does that say about the exposure to the IR?
It's also went up.
It also went up, very good. Yes.
Which system was that with?
That is AGFA.
What'd you what?
AGFA.
AGFA.
AGFA. Alright, Johns, give me another type of exposure indicator.
S value?
S value, great. So is S value directly related or inversely related to exposure and dose?
Is it inversely?
Inversely related, great. So if the S value is high, what does that tell you about your dose? What does that tell you about your exposure?
Low.
It's low, right? So if your S value is too high, you are underexposed. Not enough exposure, not enough dose. Good. Samantha, give me another exposure index.
Well, I had EI as well, exposure index, but I made the specific ones for like Phillips and the separation between like Carestream and Simmons.
Okay, so give me one of them.
Yeah, the one for Phillips only, the exposure index is inverse.
Very good. So for Phillips, if you're working the EI, the exposure index, that one is inverse. So for Phillips, if the EI is high, what does that tell you about your dose and your exposure? For Phillips.
It's low.
So if it's inverse, what does that tell you? So Samantha, if it is,
Oh, sorry.
right? So if the EI is high,
Right.
and we're talking about Phillips, and you told me Phillips is inverse, what does that tell me about the dose and the exposure?
Wolf tie, yeah, so it's high and then to low.
Good. So if the index is high, that means the exposure is low. Very good. Right. So just like S value, right? If the number is too high, that means you have underexposed. If the number is too low, that means you have overexposed. Very good. Just the opposite. Inverse opposite. So, what about EIs which are not Phillips? So EIs for Carestream.
Directly direct.
Now it's direct. So, when you do portables, what kind of machine do you use? Carestream. Have you ever paid attention to the little bar at the bottom of the Carestream machine when you shoot an image? The green bar,
It goes,
or like the blue bar, right? Changes from green to blue when you send the image. Have you noticed all of the little information there, all those details about the image? KVP, mass, but it also has EI, right? Exposure index. And that EI, Carestream's EI, right? Same thing for CR, is directly related. So if that EI is high, what does that tell you about your exposure?
Exposure is high, dose is high.
Right, your exposure was high, your dose was high. Good. So let's go to number 4. Sindhu, how are limiting spatial resolution and modulation transfer functions similar? So tell me about how they are similar.
So, the smallest object which can seen by the system,
Mhm.
like,
Okay, so we have a definition, the smallest object that can be seen by the system. What does that describe? Which of these words?
so that's the limited spatial resolution.
Very good. So smallest object the system can describe, that is the LSR, limiting spatial resolution. Great.
And the Can I tell the difference? I can tell
You want to tell the difference? Okay, sure, fine. Give me the difference.
the difference is that LSR depend on outside factors
Mhm.
and less accurate.
Okay.
Accurate compared to the MTF.
All right. So yes, LSR does depend on outside factors, things like the monitor, things like whoever is trying to view those line bars, right? Eyesight. So yes, LSR isn't going to be as accurate. It's not as consistent measure. It's not as consistent a measure when we want to describe. Well,
That compares.
what? So what do these describe?
Spatial resolution.
This describes
spatial-
spatial resolution. What does this describe?
Spatial resolution.
So
Similar.
how are they similar?
Spatial
They
resolution.
both measure spatial resolution.
Very good, right? So they're similar because they both measure spatial resolution. But they are different because LSR does depend on outside factors, MTF does not.
One uses amplitude and frequency, one uses
All right, so which one uses amplitude and frequency?
MTF.
MTF, yes, very good. All right,
Small question.
go ahead, John.
You said the outside examples of outside factors were like eyesight and
Mhm.
what else?
The monitor.
Okay.
When do you, hold on, what is this?
Then the part one.
I mean, I don't think it's gonna be harder than part one, but once again, I don't think you guys trust my opinion, so I'm not sure why you ask sometimes.
Oh, damn.
But I think it's easier.
Because there's no dumb question.
That's true, there's no dumb question.
We trust your opinion.
You do trust my opinion?
Yes.
Okay.
So what's your opinion?
My opinion is that it's easier.
Mm.
Okay, hold on, why is this acting up?
Not looking at you.
MTF uses resolution.
This is Friday.
What does MTF use?
What is it?
What does MTF use?
Measure space MTF and LSR measure spatial resolution. Random. That's a similarity.
Okay, yes, Cody.
For that one, as far as like the similarities,
Mhm.
I read that they both use line pairs, like per millimeter.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yes. So they both do make use of the unit line pairs per millimeter. So LSR directly uses line pairs per millimeter. MTF indirectly uses line pairs per millimeter because it describes the line pairs per millimeter or the frequency, the spatial frequency, as a percentage.
Okay.
So that will come as a difference, sir?
So the similarity is that they both make use of line pairs per millimeter. The difference is how they make use of line pairs per millimeter. One uses it directly as the unit, one uses it to calculate its percentage. And the percentage is the unit for MTF. Or-
Because that's like on the graph, like down at the bottom, where it says spatial frequency. Is that like the percentage?
So spatial frequency is the line pairs per millimeter.
Mhm.
Line pairs per millimeter is a measure of spatial frequency.
Okay.
That's how we talk about spatial frequency. So MTF, right, then the y-axis is, so I call it a percentage, but in reality, we just talk about it as a decimal, right? It's either 1 or 1 to 0, right? Or anything in between, so it could be 0.7, 0.5, 0.3, right? MTF. DQE on the other hand, right? DQE is your actual percentage. So if you see a number as a percentage, it's probably DQE. If you see a number as a decimal, between 1 and 0, that's probably MTF. If you just see a straight out number and it ends in LP per mm, that's line pairs per millimeter, LSR.
Because
You
on
say
my graph of
correct.
MTF, it only goes up to 1.
Right. So
And in your flashcards, it says 100%.
Yeah.
One is 100%, I think.
And then,
So are you
DQE,
So
it
maybe I-
says
Uh-oh.
are you gonna answer this question first?
One.
Okay.
So percentage is D.
Alright, so that is what it should be like. So if the flashcards say percentage, then I most likely made a typo. So I'll have to go back and double check that
Oh.
during the.
This is all chapter 10 still, right, sir?
This is all chapter 10, yes.
Part two.
Part 2.
Part 2, yes. That's okay, right? It just goes to show that even Mr. Phung is human, right? I'm not some supercomputer, I'm not some alien being. I'm only human, right? And so you're learning alongside all of you.
Are you?
If you were, you would want us to believe that you were
Oh,
human,
yeah.
so you would have made those mistakes on purpose. I know.
Still not human.
in one chart it
I'm
goes
gonna
from
need you to
0
do that.
1, and the other chart it goes
I'm on a
from
robot survey.
0 to 100%.
Correct. So MTF is measured as 0 to 1, DQE is measured as 0% to 100%.
What is going on back there?
I'm sorry. Had a moment.
It says DQE of 1 would mean 100%, DQE of 0.5.
Stop. Uh-oh.
Let's check.
Uh-oh.
So it was
Was
it
it
was
third one?
Do I have
numbers,
the
numbers, and then jump on top.
Do I have it
Stop.
backwards?
That was like.
Maybe on the backwards. Let's double check.
IPM
Let's double
over
check.
MM.
Thank you.
How do you write that? IPM over.
And
It's like millislash IPM. IPM.
I got it. So it's L.
no, IP over.
It's L. Yeah. So line pairs.
LP.
LP over millimeters.
Oh yeah, line pairs per
Hold up.
millimeter.
Already got in the book.
Okay, so in that case, it seems like, oh, right, so maybe,
So is it
maybe it
backwards?
could be both percentage and a decimal.
Google it real quick.
Because, so the reason why I'm saying this is because yesterday, we actually had a call with GE discussing the equipment for the other row. And they gave us a itemized sheet with like all the equipment we'd be receiving. And on that itemized sheet was a listing for a detector. And it gave the specs for the detector. And wouldn't you know, in the specs for the detector, it talked about things like pixel pitch. It talked about things like DQE. And I'm pretty sure on their spec sheet, the DQE was listed as a percentage. But it should be fine either way.
And then the, like,
As long as you can convert between a percentage and a decimal.
42, when it says DQE of 1,
Mhm.
it says,
Mhm. Yes.
Mr. Phung, this PowerPoint is not going to be wrong. It cannot be wrong.
It cannot be wrong.
It's not right.
That's a very,
Both.
there's a lot of pressure now, Hans. There's a lot of pressure now, Shahid. Well, both of you are putting a lot of pressure.
Next time, man,
Next
I
question.
love
Your next question should be: Was it Mr. Wilson that made this or Mr. Phung?
Yes, go
Or
ahead.
was it then?
Go ahead,
R
Monty.
34,
Yes.
slide 34. It says sampling frequency. is
Just
a
go over the
distance.
whole thing.
Honestly.
Basic.
But I thought sampling pitch was the distance between.
I mean, yeah, it is. It is. That's the pitch.
Let her cook, let her cook.
Yeah.
That comes
No, you're correct. I'm sorry,
Something
you are
burning?
correct. So, sampling pitch, so I should say, I should not have said the question, that's just related.
It looked like you gonna be sending out a new PowerPoint.
I hope not.
So this is the third updated chapter 10?
Alright, there we go.
And then if it's
Sorry about that, so
He said inversely.
Okay.
sampling frequency is inversely related to the distance between the
Yeah.
lasers.
Now we can remember that,
Which one's the
guys.
34?
Yes, great catch, thank you, Marcy.
Good job,
How did you even find this?
Yeah, right?
She's like, I read the book.
That's good.
Since she's 36 hours a day.
No.
He said, don't cover my favorite student.
Position or distance.
Mine says the female listen.
Although, I mean, if the rest of you try to study 16 hours a day.
Simmer down, Mr.
Alright.
Simmer.
Alright.
Simmer down.
Alright.
And she had clinical for 8 hours.
Goes adding,
It's not audio.
That relates to me how?
She doesn't sleep.
So, anyway, real quick, guys.
Okay.
So in
So, as far as LSR and MTF and DQE go, right, especially MTF and DQE that we've been talking about, right, whether it's as a percentage or as a decimal, just understand, right, that you're working from things between 0 to 100%, right? As a decimal, you're working with things between 0 to 1. So don't stress out about the unit, right? Just understand what the values mean, right? High MTF, high DQE, right? High spatial resolution, high efficiency. Low MTF, low DQE, low spatial resolution, low efficiency, right? That's the main thing you need to take away from this.
Carly didn't create a chart.
Right, good recovery.
so in layman's terms, that's what the answer for number 4 was.
So, in layman's terms, answer to number 4, both of these measure spatial resolution,
Yeah.
but LSR depends on outside factors, while MTF does not. Okay,
Cool.
Number 5. Let's see, Shamika, give me one type of assessment performed on a monitor.
Your daily overall assessment.
Good, daily overall assessment. All right, and as a bonus,
For
but,
me?
but without bonus points,
Oh,
what kind of test pattern would be used for that overall?
TG
TG
18 QC.
QC, very good.
It's not like
Can we just say QC?
You don't like
Does
the
also
TG
have
18?
TG 18?
No.
no.
Not
All
16.
your test patterns
No,
have
18.
TG.
Yeah, not 16.
We just say QC.
Yeah.
Test pattern?
Yeah, all your test patterns start with TG 18.
So we're gonna just
So-
say QC.
All right, so yes,
QC,
lazy, right?
AD.
Lazy, not
Reflection.
Chara.
QC, AD, LN.
But that's all. Remember QC.
Okay,
QC, and
Ansi, give me another assessment, please.
Okay.
Reflection, monthly, quarterly.
Good, reflection is monthly or quarterly, great. And would you happen to remember which test pattern you can use to test for that?
So that's gonna be the
AD, all dark, very good. Alright, Reagan, what is another assessment?
Geometric distortion.
Geometric distortion. Hey, very good. So, is geometric distortion daily or monthly, quarterly?
Monthly, quarterly.
Monthly, quarterly, very good. And would you happen to remember what kind of test pattern?
Absolutely not. I'm so sorry, not yet. I'll move that way.
18 QC.
We'll just say about the luminous, the one with
Is it the same thing?
Time for a break.
I think
No, it's not.
So yes,
No, it's not.
it is QC, very good. Remember, TG18 QC is used for 3 things. So we've gotten 2 of them so far, right? We've gotten our daily assessment, and we've gotten our geometric distortion.
Oh,
Yes,
resolution.
Yes, so the third one is
He was
resolution.
like a.
Yes, but
Out of
we're getting
order.
ahead of ourselves. Hold on. Just-
He was
So,
like a.
very good, Reagan. Carla, give us fourth. Right? There's 1, 2, yeah. Yes, give us a 4th assessment that we need to do. Luminance response. Great. And is luminance response a daily or monthly, quarterly assessment? Also monthly, quarterly. Good.
What's that
And
pattern?
what kind of test pattern would we use for luminance response? Very good. It is LN. LN01, LN08, and LN18.
So is that luminance value or dependency?
That is luminance response.
Response.
Sorry, just looking at
So
the one.
you can think of that as value. And very good, that's right, Melanie. We also have we also have TG18CT as well. So we have the LN series, right, 1, 8, 18, or we could also use CT instead. Great job. All right,
So is
Cody.
it LN18 CT? I forget how.
No, it is LN01, LN08, LN18, right? So that's one option you have. Your other option is just CT,
LNCT.
not LNCT.
Oh, I see.
Just
Oh, you don't do
CT.
those and do it with CT.
Correct. If you don't want to use the LNs, you use CT.
CT meaning
Color
computer. Oh, color tile.
Color tile.
Not computed tomography.
No,
No.
not computed tomography. TG18 color tile. All right. So, Cody, fifth one, please.
Luminance dependency.
Yes, luminance dependencies. Great. So, are the dependencies daily or monthly, quarterly?
Monthly, quarterly.
Monthly, quarterly. Great. And what kind of test patterns do we have for dependencies?
UNL. Well, it's UNL.
Very good.
I think it's like 10 or 80.
That's it. Very good. So we have the UNL series. UNL comes with UNL 10 and UNL 80. Right? 10, 10, or 80, 80. Great. And then Janelle, what is the final assessment that we can do?
You said resolution.
Resolution, right. And what test patterns can we use for resolution?
QC and CX.
Good. QC and CX. Right? Remember, they both have cube in it, right? Quirky cube, cube exciting, right? So QC, CX.
QCC what?
CX.
X. Sorry.
And is resolution something we do daily or something we do monthly, quarterly?
Monthly, quarterly.
Good, monthly, quarterly. Great job. So as you may have noticed, right, we've only got one daily thing, right? Which is properly named daily assessment, right? And then the rest of them are monthly or quarterly. Great. Charo. Or actually, sorry, Jay, you had a question.
Geometric distortions pattern was what again? QC what?
TG18 QC.
Just QC?
Just QC. Right. Charo, number 6 here. When you pull up an image during image review, the patient's name, date of birth, medical record number, and the mass and KVP of the exam are all included. What makes this possible?
This is possible because of DICOM, Digital Imaging and Communication in Medicine Standards.
Good. This is possible because of the DICOM standard.
And DICOM is a standardized language developed in 1983 for different systems to communicate.
You sound like Siri.
Good. And so, what do we call this section that we store this extra information in?
Header.
Oh, I see.
What do we call this extra section of the data?
Header.
The header. Very good. The DICOM header. Alright. And then for our final question, Veronica. Just have to do 5 of these. So, Veronica's annotation, pre or
Kind of
post?
funny.
Post. Automatic rescaling. Pre. Cropping. Post. Dead pixel correction. Pre. Edge enhancement. Post. Very good. And so, for the remaining ones, equalization, this one is post. Flat field correction, this one is pre. Image flip, this one is post. Image inversion, this one is post. Leveling, post. Magnification, post. Masking, post. Quantization, pre. Smoothing, post. Stitching, post. Windowing, post.
Good job, Mr. Phung.
Alright. Thank you.
You got all those right.
Had a little bit of shaky at the beginning. Put it off at the end.
Give us.
So they did it.
Alright, so
That'd be nice.
right now it is 1:16. Let's take a 2-minute break, and then when we get back,